All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined as always by Drew Dinsick, the whale capper. Today we're going to talk Eagles, Commanders, the repercussions of that into the NFC, Super Bowl markets. We're going to talk Offensive Player of the Year, a market that's close to my heart, Defensive Player of the Year, a market that's even closer to my heart. And then we'll highlight some NBA tonight and the Western Conference futures market. But first, Drew, how are you? How'd you enjoy the game?
Hail to the commies. That was a very spirited effort by them. It was very, I got in. I was late to the party. A lot of people were early on the commies last night, plus 11s, money lines before the game. Like there were people that believed. I was late, even though, as you kind of know, we were talking beforehand, like the whiff was in the air that we're at the market top on the Eagles. And I was like, do you pull the trigger now, or what do we do with this information, right? And the closer we got to kickoff, the more sort of the particularly the run defense questions that are swirling about the Philadelphia, like they were on the front of my mind. And you see Brian Robinson, who's really doesn't have a ton of pop, to put it politely. Just he was getting his yards against that Eagles team, and you're like, this is repeatable. They could take a little pressure off Heineke. This is going to be a solid game for them. And they come out in the second half, and yes, they caught breaks. Yes, they caught very, very fortunate fumble breaks, too, I thought, that you easily could have gone the other way if they call a face mask and if they kind of review whether or not Watkins was down. I think realistically, you could flip both of those the other direction, and Philly wins this game easily. But the fact of the matter is, what do we do with this information now about Philly? Is this a long-term signal that we need to sell on this team, or I think you can actually take some of the adjustments they made at halftime, particularly in terms of what they were doing with the run defense, and make a positive out of that and think that things could improve over the next stretch of the season. But Philadelphia, as everyone knows, has benefited from a very, very soft schedule to this point. And now they face a test, a stretch where they go up against the Colts, Packers, Titans, Giants, Bears before they play the Cowboys in the rematch. Now, the 5 teams they play before the Cowboys all have a strong first order. They want plan A to be, we are going to run the ball on you. And if you are Philly and you don't solve that problem, you are going to be in a battle every one of these weeks coming up. There are no more easy wins on your schedule if you can't solve the run defense problem. So that is kind of what is key in the top of my mind, because if the Eagles drop one more game out of this next stretch of 5, where they're going to be favored in every game, if they drop 2 more games, then the 1 seed in the NFC is completely up for grabs. That means the coach of the year market resets. That means the idea that Hurts could steal offensive player of the year, forget about it. MVP case is done. And realistically, the win equity across the NFC gets completely reshuffled, because whoever ends up with the bye and home field advantage is going to benefit appreciably. So there is definitely a path forward here where the Eagles do not solve the run defense issues, and there is a hard reset in the NFC. And I don't know if I'm really willing to stake going down that road just yet, but this is sort of the pivot point, the decision point. Do you agree with all that?
Yeah, the one thing is that, look, the Eagles have a bad rushing defense. They came into the game, I think, with the 27th ranked rush defense in DVOA. I don't think that was the problem last night, though. Like, they held Washington to 3.1 yards per carry. Like, Washington were very inefficient on the ground. I thought the reason the Eagles lost is that they lost 3 fumbles and Jalen Hurts threw a pick. So they had 4 turnovers. And then also they just couldn't get off the field on 3rd down, where Washington had incredibly 21 third downs, where they would run it for 3 yards and run it for 3 yards, and then they would convert, which just kept Philadelphia on the field. So Washington going 12 for 21 on 3rd down, 1 for 1 on 4th down. I thought that was the story. I think that in other weeks and going forward, yes, this Eagles rushing defense is going to be more of a problem, and we're going to get a pretty good look at that this weekend against the suddenly rejuvenated Colts team, with Jonathan Taylor looking a lot like Jonathan Taylor, and also that offensive line for the Colts. I don't know if that's because Jeff Saturday came in, or guys got healthier, or they just started playing better, or whatever, but the offensive line was the best that it's looked all season. Quentin Nelson looking a lot like Quentin Nelson as well. So that's a concern for the Eagles. I think, in terms of repercussions into the market, into futures, They go from plus 500 to plus 650 for the Super Bowl. Now they have the same record as Minnesota. The Eagles still do have the tie break, and they have a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way. So they're still definitely the favorite to get the 1 seed. But the other thing is now it looks like the Cowboys had shut the door on themselves to the NFC East with that loss to Green Bay. That is now live again, not just because the Eagles lost, but the fact they lost the divisional game, which is going to be probably if the Cowboys and Eagles end up tied, with the Cowboys beating them in Dallas later in the season. Next tiebreak is divisional record. The Eagles now have got this loss to the Commanders on their schedule. The Cowboys don't have any other losses in the division. So the Cowboys would now, to me, if the tiebreak comes into play, Cowboys are clear favorites to win that tiebreak. So that's just another thing. But I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that 2 things. One, we're going to talk about Offensive Player of the Year. Jalen Hurts is not winning that award. He was never winning that award. It's ridiculous. Right. The market has him like plus 600 to plus 900. I'd need 50 to 1 to back Jalen Hurts to win that award. He was never going to win it anyway. He didn't have the volume. And then secondly, my biggest advice would be that if you're betting futures markets and you're looking at teams in the AFC, don't bother taking them to win the AFC. Just bet their Super Bowl price, because the NFC sucks. And I think there's a very good chance that the 4 best teams in the NFL this year are all in the AFC. Yeah. And that's Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, and Baltimore. And look, Baltimore and Miami against San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, that's probably the same tier, but I think there's a very good chance that those teams are certainly in the AFC better than what the Eagles have shown to date. So those would be all my thoughts. How does that all settle?
It all settles well. Excited now for Thanksgiving. We have a Giants-Cowboys game that could ostensibly have humongous ramifications. Preseason, you're thinking, why in the world are the Giants and the Cowboys on Thanksgiving? Is sort of the mid, the middle of the day, main course. And now that feels like a very important game. Giants are live to get the 1 seed in the NFC, which is unbelievable. I think that goes to your point.
I still keep on thinking about the NFC. So it's just Eagles, Cowboys, because you just expect the Giants to tail off. But I mean, at some point, they're playing the Lions this week, and then they've got 2 games against the Eagles as well, which is not. Obviously, that's not a good matchup, and they're going to be underdogs in both of those games. But you want to win a division. When you want to win a division as an underdog, you want these higher leverage games to give you the chance to kind of get that upside. So I don't know. Yeah, they're 7-2. They're a game clear of the Cowboys. So I guess that's something that we have to talk
We're not talking about comeback play of the year market yet, but you know who matches up pretty well against the Eagles defense? Mr. Saquon Barkley. That's kind of a potential problem there. But no,
point that out, Drew. It's a reward, and we all know.
Well, yes. If Geno Smith gets second, and then Nick Sirianni gets second in Coach of the Year, and if all of these things transpire, it's going to be a very painful month of January. Whenever they do that at that awards show, February, I guess. But that's sort of the norm now.
I'm just getting crushed on these awards.
Yeah,
go
ahead.
Let's jump into OPOY, because I think that's the award where, look, Saquon is more likely to win comeback player than offensive player of the year, but I think he is live for offensive player of the year as well. I never understand the way these markets are priced, because Saquon right now is the clear offensive identity of a team that's shockingly 7-2, that is going to make the playoffs barring absolute catastrophe. And right now he's possessing the rushing title. So he shouldn't be 16-1 to win offensive player of the year. But at the same time, rightfully, the 2 favorites in the market right now on PointsBet are Justin Jefferson, who's plus 225, Tyreek Hill plus 300. I don't agree with Jalen Hurts plus 900 at all. Mahomes is interesting at 10-1. We'll talk about him. Stephon Diggs, 11-1. Not for me. And then Derrick Henry at 12-1, which I think is about fair price now. But what's your look on this market?
Yeah, this is I think you can basically eliminate quarterbacks from this, in my opinion. There is a very, very, very kind of singular case where Mahomes does not get the MVP, but does get this award as a consolation. But I think that that's pretty unlikely. It is seemingly, to me at least, looking at Kansas City's schedule, looking at the way that this team is playing, in sort of the arc of the defense even improving, Kansas City being sort of perceived as the market best team between now and the end of the regular season is 60 to 75% chance. Like I just don't know that you're going to get enough of a shakeup to change people's perception of that. Mahomes with the counting stats on top of being the quarterback of the best team is, in my mind, a very, very high likelihood to win the MVP. So that takes him out of this race in my mind. This is going to go to the best wide receiver or running back. I think that you make a fair point about Barkley. I think Henry also still alive because that there's a reasonable chance that Tennessee gets the 2 seed in the AFC. Which at some point people are going to want to share some of the credit for that exceeding expectations, like always. And it could be that Henry gets the shine. But Tyreek Hill and Jefferson being the top of this market is correct to me. A little bit of recency bias putting Jefferson over Hill, certainly. I have been struggling to figure out here if Minnesota can somehow steal the 1 seed in the NFC, what happens? I think Kevin O'Connell getting coach of the year is more likely than Jefferson flipping Hill. And I think, Hill playing in, this is tough. Jefferson plays in a dome. Hill plays in Southern Florida. Neither guy really going to be impacted by winter weather coming up here. Although Hill does have some outdoor games coming up in December and January. So, maybe a slight lean to Jefferson between those two, but this being a 2-man race is not outrageous to me.
Yeah, I think it's funny because the Vikings have a better record than the Dolphins. They have the fewer. They're 8-1, but at the same time, I think the Tyreek Hill's issue is that he plays on a much better team. I think the Dolphins are kind of substantially better than Minnesota, and the Tyreek's issue is that he's going to run into some games like against Cleveland where they just don't need to throw the ball at all in the fourth quarter. And now they've got this dynamic running back duo in Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. And also Tyreek is competing with Jalen Waddle for touches. Mike Gesicki's getting more involved now. But the main thing is that they are, they're going to be leading games late. Whereas Jefferson, who's really the only good thing about Minnesota, if we're being serious.
Sure.
Like, he is the one thing that really separates that team. And they play in 1-score games every single week because they're not that good. And Jefferson's volume relative to, Thielen and Hawkinson, like Thielen's not the same caliber of player as Jalen Waddle. Like Jefferson is going to continue to get so many targets, so much volume. I don't think his kind of play-by-play performance is as repeatable as Hill because Jefferson relies so much on absurd contested catches, whereas Hill, just by the nature of his game and his skill set, gets his yards, I think, a little bit easier than Jefferson. That's probably more repeatable. But, I think these guys are neck and neck. Hill, I think, is 88 receiving yards in front of Jefferson, but Jefferson has a game in hand, so it's basically a wash there. They've got the same amount of touchdowns. I think narrative-wise, it's about the same because Tyreek, he gets traded there and then he's performing without Mahomes, whereas Jefferson is the entire Minnesota offense. So I think that's largely a wash. But yeah, I think one of these two guys will win unless they fall off or get hurt, in which case I think the two guys looming are the running backs, Henry and Saquon. Chubb is done now after the Cleveland's record falling off. Mahomes is the one, though, who I think that if ever he's could win by default, like he did in 2018, where he swept MVP and OPOY. Where if Mahomes, who's only like, I don't know, I think Mahomes is probably like plus 200 to break the passing record. He's a good chance of 50 touchdowns. So if he breaks the passing yards record and gets 50 touchdowns, and neither Tyreek or Jefferson are breaking the receiving yards record and they tail off a little bit, then Mahomes absolutely can kind of win by default. But my money would be on the receivers. All right, before we jump into EPOY, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Just before we jump into DPOY, just to kind of round off, because I know it's always good to give actual, prices in terms of, what we're discussing. Right now, I make Jefferson plus 250 for OPOY. I make Tyreek Hill plus 275, so right neck and neck. and I make Saquon and Henry both 11-1. Mahomes slightly shorter. So if I was making one bet in the market right now, I don't think there's a ton of meat on the bone, but it would be Saquon at 16-1, just because he's leading the league in rushing yards at the moment. Let's talk DPOY. Micah Parsons, who has been anointed. He's minus 250. Nick Bosa has been the challenger basically all season. He's plus 650. Matthew Judon, the sack leader, he's got a 2-sack lead on the field, is plus 900. Zadarius Smith, a bit of a dark horse, plus 1600. And then Myles Garrett, 30-1, who's not going to win. Who do you like in this market?
I want to make a case for a longer shot, I think. I mean,
is it Chris Jones?
No. I hadn't really thought about Jones. No, I think again, kind of in the mindset of, the final standings when the dust settles are going to determine a lot of this, the award distribution. And there is a tendency to try to share, the credit. And so you look at kind of the more likely ones. We've kind of decided already that, like, hey, if the Vikings and the Dolphins and the Chiefs, if they're getting credit, it's going to be on the offensive side of the ball. So I think you can basically kind of rule those teams out from getting defensive consideration. The teams that have, defenses that I think people perceive as, kind of meaningful in and driving their success. Obviously, the Cowboys and obviously the 49ers are in that conversation, but they have regressed pretty substantially over the last handful of weeks. I think, the fact that you have a team like the Ravens succeeding, even though the advanced metrics would tell you that defense is not very good, they've made all of their investments on the defensive side of the ball. And, they have had a couple of players, really, make standout plays that kind of decided games. So I think if the Ravens ultimately are in the discussion for, a top 2 seed, maybe even the 2 seed in the AFC, people may look to that defense to see if they can reward somebody. In which case, if Justin Houston is in the conversation with the Judons and the Bosas of the world, as far as most sacks, he may get a little bit of, consideration there. But I think ultimately, there's probably a bet to be made against Micah Parsons is where I'm getting to here. And minus 250 is just too much certainty considering how much is left to play. And in general, the fact that, right now, the Cowboys would be in as a wild card. So it's appealing to try to look down the board here and find some bigger price to put in pocket and just try to count on, the uncertainty that is the NFL this season.
Yep, I'm with you on fading Parsons, and the biggest reason why is, one, the Cowboys are now 6-3, so they do have a little bit of downside. They are effectively a playoff lock, but there is certainly a chance that the public could sour on the Cowboys if they continue to have games like they did against Green Bay. But the bigger concern with Parsons is that the whole thing with Micah Parsons last year is that you've got basically the best edge rusher in the NFL, and you're playing him at off-ball linebacker where you're not taking advantage of his skill set, where, great, he's a really good off-ball linebacker, but being the best pass rusher in the NFL at edge is so much more valuable. And then basically in the first 9 weeks of this season, the Cowboys got away from what they were doing last year. They were using Parsons as almost a pure edge rusher where he was getting over 70% of his snaps rushing the passer. And then against Green Bay, they went back to what they did last year, and he rushed the passer 9 times. And if that's going to be a thing going forward, then he's in big trouble for this award because he's not going to get the sack total. And I think it's going to be difficult for him to win if he's got 13 sacks and Nick Bosa has 19 sacks. With Nick Bosa potentially also maybe being on a better defense. We'll see about that. So I agree that minus 250, to your point, there's too much certainty there on Parsons. I still think that I would still take Parsons over the field just because you read these mid-season awards columns and Parsons is winning unanimously across like 60 voters. I do think as well that he doesn't need to win the sack title or anything because he does have the linebacker element, which is a bit of a cheat code for him where he's not going to get compared directly to Bosa, to Judon in terms of sack numbers. But if there is a big enough gap, then it's going to be an issue for him. So right now, I make Parsons more like minus 150 as opposed to minus 250. And People might not, to the naked eye think that's a massive difference, but it's like 20% in implied probability. We're going from 40% chance, or it's a pretty significant to go from minus 250 to minus 150. So I think that Parsons is a fade at that price. Is there one name that jumps out to you that should be, the best bet at these current prices?
So this is the problem. The guy that I mentioned, who I think could sneak into this conversation, isn't listed. he's not up anywhere, and it is Justin Houston. Justin Houston has a sack in every game he's played this year for the Ravens. He is currently knocking on the door of the sack leader. Even though he missed weeks 4, 5, and 6. Actually, he only played 9% of snaps in week 3. So he really effectively missed 4 games, yet he is knocking on the door for sack leader. He gets games against Carolina, Jacksonville, and Denver next 3. And I think, again, there could be a conception when we get to the end of the year that the Baltimore has done it by defense, just considering the fact that Lamar Jackson has nothing going, nothing helping him on offense. And just, it's a well-coached team. There's a lot of investment on the defensive side of the ball. And, he could ultimately get like a career achievement award kind of consideration in that market. So I'm gonna shop around, see if I can get someone to hang a price that's not that's bettable. But I think realistically, the sack leader, whoever that is going to absolutely get consideration if the Dallas defense regresses and Parsons is not accruing counting stats.
Yeah, I can't get involved with Matthew Judon at plus 900, even if he is the favorite for the sack title. Like, the thing is like, no one actually thinks Matthew Judon is better than Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons. No one thinks he's in the same tier as those guys. It's the same thing that was going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue anymore, it looks like. But no one thinks Jalen Hurts is as good as Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. And I do think that comes into play. So Judon would probably have to win the sack title going away. Probably has to break the record, honestly, to win DPOY on a Patriots team that is 5-4 and kind of blah. The defense has been better. So I think this is more just one to watch. You can write off Myles Garrett. You can write off Aaron Donald.
I agree.
You can probably write off Khalil Mack as well in that struggling team.
Agree.
Chris Jones is interesting to me at 33-1. I think some narrative could potentially build there. So that would be one to monitor. Zadarius Smith would be one to monitor if, I'm going to say that of people who watch more than 4.5 hours of NFL per week, I'm going to say that 28% know what team Zadarius Smith plays on.
And for sure.
Probably the bulk of people would still say he plays for the Packers.
And some might even say Ravens.
Ravens, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I remember seeing him at purple. Ravens?
Yeah. That's an issue there.
Yeah.
Also, I butchered my math before because I'm always trying to convert American odds to decimal odds in Australia in my head. So minus 250 is 71% probability. That's what Parsons is in the market. And I've got him minus 150, which is 60%.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
So there's a little bit, I think, of meat on the bone there.
Okay. I think we settled this. I want to be writing Jalen Hurts tickets at current price, and I want to be writing Micah Parsons tickets at current price.
Yeah. I agree. Those are the two fates. Fade Hurts and everything. Fade Parsons in this, even though he still probably wins. All right. Before we jump into some of the association, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football and on the PGA Tour. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Chargers and Chiefs in our Sunday night 7 contest. All right, let's talk basketball. Let's go to our beloved Memphis Grizzlies, home of the NBA's most improved player, Desmond Bane, who is doubtful for tonight, unfortunately. But Jaren Jackson looks like he will be back. And they are 3.5-point dogs on the road to New Orleans. The total is 228.5. Do you have any look on this game, Mr. Whale Kappa?
Yeah, Grizzlies for me here. I think the Grizzlies are substantially the better team. This is time to be accruing Grizzlies for the future. Every single time that they have had sort of a key player out, the guys that they are backfilling with are way better than market represents them via price. And this is a good example of this. My fare here is a pick 'em, so happy to take the points with the Grizz.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think their level of depth, and yeah, they just have a lot of guys that like no one knows who Santi Aldama is, but he's actually
Yeah, he's been good.
Highest
Yes,
Jones is like a really good
he's been
backup
good.
point guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, just watching them play the other night in the nationally televised game against the Timberwolves, it was just looking at like a team that has complete kind of knowledge and awareness of its identity, knows exactly what it wants to do. There is order versus watching this Timberwolves team that they've broken my heart through. The Timberwolves, they are absolutely garbage. They are horrific at the moment in kind of every regard. I'm never riding with Karl Anthony Towns again. He's in a way, for all your talent, Kat, and I agree, you're the best shooting big man of all time. It's just he's not an easy guy to cheer for, and his defense right now is out of control. But yeah, I think with the Grizz, Dylan Brooks, since he came back off the injury to start the season, though he is maddening at times, he is a very effective player. Brandon Clark is a monster off the bench. Concha, Roddy, Tyus Jones, like people couldn't pick out most of these guys off the street, but they're very solid players. Concha and Aldama in particular, like take a look at those two. I'm with you taking them even without, most likely without our man Desmond Bain. Let's talk about Clippers, Mavs. The Clippers have kind of righted the ship a little bit. Now they're 8-6. They did have an ugly loss over the weekend to the rejuvenated Brooklyn Nets. They're 7-point dogs at Dallas. The total, always a low total relative to kind of perception in Dallas games because of the pace they play at. It's at 212 flat. What do you like in this game?
I am struggling here. Because my numbers say Dallas. Like, don't overthink it. Play the Mavs. The Mavericks have had a knack for being for specifically putting their thumb in my eye this season. Like games that they have had no business being decided at the end of the game with Luka heroics, they have kind of choked leads or made it way more dramatic than they ought to have. Nothing has come easy for this team, and I'm expecting the same result here where I play the Mavericks, I lay the points, and they're up by double digits through 3.5 quarters, and all of a sudden it's like, how is this game being decided in the final moments again? So I have a complicated relationship with these guys, but I have this as a very bad spot for the Clippers. I'm expecting them to have some general surprises in terms of player availability here. But my numbers make this 8.5. So I laid it with 7 with the Dallas Mavericks. And again, expecting to have my heart broken here.
Yeah. If the number kind of looks big on the surface, Dallas -7 over a team that came in effectively joint favorites to win the Western Conference. Obviously Kawhi Leonard is out, but then the main thing for this game in the context of the schedule is that the Clippers are on a road back-to-back, although it's not a massive amount of travel going from Houston to Dallas, but at the same time, road back-to-back. One thing is that they didn't really play that many minutes last night. Their guys, like Paul George was 29 minutes. All the starters were sub 30 minutes. I think the Mavs are a weird team. We're going to talk about quickly the Western Conference market, but the Mavs, like their second best player is Christian Wood, and they don't play him. And it's a weird thing where he's definitely their second most talented player anyway. I know Dinwiddie's been playing incredibly, but it's just there's a weird kind of just synergy with that team, with their lineups. I think there's a lot of potential there, but at the same time, you can't really trust them night to night. And the Clippers do have the second-ranked defense at the moment, which has been a lot better than expected. Just quickly before we close out, Western Conference title market, I think we're agreed on the Grizz at 800 being a bet. Can I interest you in any Denver Nuggets at plus 800?
No, thanks. I know that was a little glib and that they probably ought to be given some consideration, surely. The team, when they get to playoff time, is going to be a lot better than they are now. They are reintegrating pieces who have come off of long injury layoffs, but expecting that those guys will be there at 100% come playoff time, I don't think is a given. And I don't see this number appreciably shortening between now and the end of the season. Grizzlies, on the other hand, I think will shorten because I think they will be able to distance themselves in the standings and really kind of, clearly secure a top 2 seed in the Western Conference, which at that point people are just going to be like, okay, next step forward. Team made it to round 2 of the playoffs last year. Here they go, Western Conference Finals this year. Like, that's sort of the mindset of a lot of the people who are playing futures markets in the NBA. And the reason that they think that way is because that's the way it works a lot of the time. And so Grizzlies taking a meaningful step forward once Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back, once they're fully healthy. Like, this is going to be a team to be reckoned with. Whereas Denver, yes, they have the altitude advantage at home. Yes, they should win home games at a pretty eye-popping clip. Yes, their division happens to be very weak, because I figured that they had to go up head-to-head with the mighty Timberwolves, and now the Timberwolves, it turns out, stink out loud. And so, yes, they have basically their entire division to themselves once Portland comes back to earth here. But I still I'm not seeing enough development of the younger pieces of the players around Jokic to get any kind of excitement going about the Nuggets. What is the bull case for them at 8-1?
They've got the best player on the planet, arguably, and Nikola Jokic. MPJ has looked healthy, fine. Jamal Murray hasn't looked as good, but there's still obviously a lot of upside with him. I think Bones Highland has a decent amount of upside. Bruce Brown has been kind of perfect for them. He's really good. And KCP is a good fit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the Nuggets, but at the same time, I just think the West right now, to me, is very flat at the top. I don't think there's one team that's distinguished themselves. The way I price this out, I think that the Warriors, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Grizz, they should all be in the plus 500 range, and then we'll see what the hell happens with the Clippers and Kawhi. And then I would have the Mavs kind of top of the next tier. But look, if I had to bet my life on one team to win the Western Conference right now, regardless of the odds, I would take Memphis, just because of the upside in that youth. I think Desmond Bane is, we're going to be spouting Desmond Bane propaganda all season long because we're on him to win Most Improved Player. But at the same time, like, he's a bona fide star, all NBA guy, the way he's playing right now, like 62% true shooting and 27% usage. There's like 10 guys in the league who are able to do that. So he's legit, they're legit, and the Grizzlies at plus 800, they would be my bet in the West. All right. Good episode today, Drew. That was fun. We'll wrap now. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.